Welcome to StarCraft 2 Battle Report.
My name is Dustin Browder. I'm the lead designer on StarCraft 2.
And I'm Robert Simpson, a Blizzard esports team member.
We've got a great game for you here today. We have a battle report between Yun-Ho Lee playing as the blue Protoss versus David Kim as the red Terrans.
They're going to be duking it out on Lost Temple. The map name may sound familiar. Yes, it has been redone for StarCraft 2.
This is a classic map from the original game that we've done a few additional tweaks to for StarCraft 2 to get some additional game plan. We've got two bases here. We've got David Kim here on the right-hand side as the Red Terrans. And you can see that these players are very close together as the bird flies. There's a very small amount of space separating these players. But if you move across the map, we can get a look at a few of the features which will be key to this game. There's a very narrow choke point leading outside of your base. It's a great place to defend. There's sort of an area here where you can naturally and very easily expand your base to get some additional resources, and another choke point to defend, a wider choke point this time, but still something you can defend against enemy attacks. There is some high ground here that you can sort of hope to use against your enemy one way or the other. You can sneak some forces there. There's also these Zelnaga watchtowers on the map, and you can gain control of these watchtowers and see a huge area of the map. Control of those watchtowers is very key to sort of understanding what's going on the battlefield.
This is a high-yield expansion. It's also blocked by those destructible rocks. It's really, really important in the late game for one of these players to take that over, have some additional resources. It'll often help a player make that final push that they really need to overcome their opponent.
And you can see it is mirrored on all sides. There's another watchtower, and of course there were some more rocks there with some more high-yield resources. So you can expect the players to sort of battle across this whole area of the map. Again, there's another high ground area that you can use to defend your base, or you can use it to make surprise attacks on a player who's trying to defend his natural expansion there. So it looks like the scouts are already on the move from these players, looking to move around some of their early workers on the map to see what the enemy is up to.
Up on the production overlay, we can see that the Red Terran player is currently working on his barracks and his refinery. There we see the scouts just past each other. So now David Kim might have a better idea of where exactly Yun-Ho's camping out. We'll see if he sends his SCV to that 12 o'clock position or not. Meanwhile, back at David Kim's base, he is working on blocking the front of his ramp with his barracks and two supply depots.
This is a very natural thing for Terran players to do, especially against Zerg or against Protoss, to try to block off your ramp there to prevent sort of early attacks with Zealots. Buy your Marines some more time to get in some more shots. And you can see in this case, it's had the extra advantage of also blocking off that probe from getting inside and seeing what it needs to see inside David Kim's base. A little bit of aggressive moves there. It looks like that worker from David Kim's in a little bit of trouble there. He's being attacked by Yun-Ho's probe, and it looks like he's going to have to run for cover there, try to get away from that very, very aggressive probe attack.
Yeah, SCV barely making it away with 20 HP. If that supply depot had taken a few more seconds, it would have been done. We can see that David Kim is going for an orbital command. Very early, he wants to have his resource advantage.
Yeah, there we go. There's the worker trying to get back in the base. You see he lowered his supply depot to let the worker back in. He had a Marine there to drive off that probe. So it looks like David Kim has managed to see what's inside the Protoss base, which is what he needed to do. He needed to scout, and he has done so successfully. Meanwhile, the Protoss right now are blind. They don't know exactly what's going on inside the Terran base. There's not a lot of possibilities at this point, but this only becomes a bigger issue later on. He needs to see what's going on inside so he can make smart tech choices.
In Yun-Ho's base, he has gone for a single gateway and obelisk as well as a cybernetics core. This does mean that he's going to be going for stalkers and warp gates relatively early in the game. They're going to be very effective against Marines.
Yeah, he really needs to get the Stalkers into play. They can really dance around the Marines quite a bit and do a lot of damage. So the Marine player needs to get Marauders on the field to really counteract that threat. And of course, David Kim has seen that cybernetics core. He knows the danger. He knows the possibility. He'll have the counters in play. Meanwhile, the Protoss player still has not seen inside the Terran base, so he's not exactly sure what's going on. You see, the Terrans had control of the Watchtower very briefly there before that Zealot came in and drove that Marine off. And the Marine's just trying to play keep away right now. He doesn't see the danger of the approaching second Zealot, so now he's in a little bit of trouble. He's going to have to try to just run away as fast as he can, taking a hit there as he turns a corner, and here the Zealot is sort of moving around, trying to drive this Marine away, and you can see David Kim being very clever. He's just pulling that Zealot out of action. Oh, a little bit of a misturn there, and he gets cut down.
Back in David Kim's base, he has lifted off his barracks, replaced it with another supply depot, so he can maintain the block on the front of his base. He's also built a factory and used an existing reactor. He had lifted off that factory, landed on it, and built 2 Hellions. This means that we could see some very, very early resource harassing.
Yeah, these can be very, very dangerous against the Protoss. The Zealot in particular can't do a whole lot against them. The Hellions are just too fast. They can shoot, they can back up, they can shoot, they can back up, and the Zealot really just has to run for it now, try to get back to the safety of base. And the Stalker's what he needs to get into play there. The Stalker will allow him to chase and shoot up those Hellions, but even the Stalker can't keep up with the speedy Hellions as they just dance right around the Protoss forces, right up into the Protoss base, closing quickly on the probes, and the probes are forced to run for cover as the Hellion close in and just trashing the place with those flamethrowers.
David needs to maintain the pressure. He needs to be chasing those probes just a little bit faster. He's been stopping, using some flame onto the buildings. Oh, and one of his Hellions is taken down by the Stalkers. Stalkers obviously trying to focus down those Hellions. He doesn't want to lose any more probes. I believe that Yunho got away with only losing 3 probes. Very lucky escape.
Yeah, it was really, really good moves by keeping those probes away and keeping his forces pressure up. Of course, David Kim, a little too early maybe with the Hellions. Only 2, not a lot of damage he can do with those. He did do some, and he did manage to do a little bit of harassment, but you can see it didn't really pay off for him in a big way, and it looks like he's lost a little bit of board control is the point. You can see the Protoss just boiling across the map now. You can see their blue just swarming all over the place, while the Terrans, meanwhile, are backed up into their base and are waiting now for the inevitable attack.
The Terran player just finished researching siege mode. This is exactly when he needs it. We see Yunho trying to get up there with the Stalker. Siege tank just barely out of range and going to be barreling down onto those Stalkers, forcing Yunho to retreat.
Yeah, that's the kind of damage he does not want to take right now. He cannot afford to take that kind of damage with just those Stalkers. He needs a lot more forces if he's going to break that choke point at this point. Some interesting moves here from David Kim. It looks like he's going for double command centers at this point. Backed up into his base, he can lift off those command centers as the Terran and fly them to any location on the map, but still, it's a very bold move for this point in the game.
Yeah, well, he really needs to catch up on resources. We can see that Yunho did have a second base already established that's at his natural expansion, so he really needs to play his A game, and he'll likely be expanding to the island expansion since he can lift off his command center.
Yeah, this is what one Terrans commonly do on Lost Temple, both in the original StarCraft and in StarCraft 2, using the Terrans' mobility with their command centers to get access to some high-yield locations. The Protoss do have some strong air units they can use to try to harass those expansions, Void Rays in particular, but you know, in a game like this where the players are so close together, it can be very difficult for the Protoss player to realize the danger, and in many cases that expansion will simply go undetected.
Oh, and we see some Hellions sneaking all the way back behind Yunho's base. David Kim doing some very good micro with that medevac, lifting up all 4 of his Hellions just as the Stalkers get in range to kill, taking down a couple of probes there. He's trying to take down the Nullifier, but no, he lifts off just in time once again. Yunho doing the best he can to stick on that medevac, but right now David Kim's micro is really just too much for him to handle. Again, David Kim drops 4 Hellions again in his base. 1 is taken down. He just barely gets away, practically unscathed. All he needs is some repair.
Unbelievable. He manages to come in there, raid, harass that economy. That's the kind of economic advantage David Kim needs to stay in this game at this point. He harasses a little bit. He comes back. He repairs up, and he's going to be ready in a moment to do it again. You saw some warp-ins from the Protoss player. They're trying to block this, but ultimately he just wasn't fast enough to deal with that kind of speedy threat. Using the Hellions with their speed, with their area effect attacks, and the flexibility of the medevac really kept him in the game. Now we've got some real danger here. We've got a couple of siege tanks in that medevac. Let's see where those things are going.
This is something that you saw relatively often in StarCraft 1. They would use their dropships in combination with the siege tanks, and I think that David Kim's going for something very, very similar to that, especially with the way that the Stalker fire works. If a Stalker gets off his volley and the Terran player is able to pick up that siege tank again before the volley lands, that means the siege tank's not going to take any damage.
Yeah, it will actually miss, and this is something that really gives the Terrans a big advantage at this point in the game. If you can get those siege tanks to a good position, you can do a lot of damage. You can see the Hellions there harassing those Protoss player, making his Zealots just a lot less effective, and there's the landing position, moving up to a classic location in Lost Temple, getting control of the high ground, even more powerful in StarCraft 2 in many ways than it was in the original StarCraft. If you can't see those units, you can't shoot them, and you can't see in the high ground without some kind of aerial spotting. You can see the Protoss are in a lot of trouble here right now. There goes a pylon, and the probes are forced to run away as the siege tanks just pound this helpless expansion. And here's the Protoss response. An observer, a flyer cloaked, moves into play. The Terran doesn't know the danger. He doesn't know that he's there right now, and it looks like Blink is being researched, which is going to allow the Protoss to get to that high ground and get at those siege tanks.
Protoss player is just biding his time until Blink is finished. He's trying to keep the Stalkers out of the siege tank range. Obviously doesn't want to take any damage without being able to fire back, so Blink is going to finish likely in just a few seconds, and we'll see him use that observer to get sight up on the hill and then blink up and and here it comes, going for the surround on the siege tank, going to be taking them down. We do see some extra splash damage from the other siege tank actually damaging himself, and now David Kim microing the siege tank. This is amazing.
Right, just trying to get some extra damage off there. He does manage to take some extra damage. He is getting worn down there a little bit, but he's doing a lot of extra damage as he goes. And the siege tank is finally taken out. David Kim making the most out of his units there, really doing a lot of extra damage. An aggressive blink from the Protoss player gets in a few more hits on that medevac, and Kim's harassment here has come to a quick end.
Now, David Kim didn't really kill very many probes there, but he didn't need to. We saw him take down a pylon. We saw him take down an assimilator as well. But the real money shot for David Kim at that point was that Yun-Ho had to pull away his probe, so he wasn't mining from one of his bases.
Yeah, all of those workers not operating for that long a period of time is a real cost. That could be hundreds and hundreds of minerals lost by Yun-Ho in that one exchange. And yes, David Kim also lost minerals and resources by losing those units. But, it's difficult to say at this point where the advantage will lie, but it was still a really effective raid for David Kim. And, of course, it may force Yun-Ho to make different types of choices with his technology later just to avoid a similar type raid.
Yun-Ho's trying to establish map control. You see that David Kim is defended relatively well right now. He has a few Hellions. He does have some siege tanks, and he is probably unaware of Yun-Ho's 9 o'clock expansion. Yun-Ho took a second expansion, so right now he's going to have the resource advantage, but he's also going to be able to skate out the front of David Kim's base so that he won't walk into a sure trap.
Yeah, this is what he needs to see. He's got the observer in position, the siege tank shooting away the blink up into high ground. Have him pick off a single siege tank, but of course there's a cooldown on blink. He needs to get away. The Thors are closing in for the kill. He needs to buy himself, and there's the blink. He got the blink off in time, and he got away with the rest of his forces. Still a little bit of a beating he took there for not a lot of gain. And here we see is another response from Yun-Ho moving onto the board. This is a warp prism. This is a unit that you can use to transport units, but you can also use it to create a power field. And this is incredibly important for the Protoss because he can use this power field to warp in forces anywhere he wishes. Now, David Kim mysteriously has managed to main control that one watchtower, so he may have seen that warp prism fly by.
He probably was able to see that. We do see that David Kim is retaliating a little bit, trying to bunker up his base. We can see he doesn't want any stalkers getting there, harassing him anymore. And down in the lower right corner of the map, we see that warp prism has made it all the way into David Kim's island expansion. And there he goes, using that warp prism, putting it into phase mode, and bringing in some zealots. This is not good for David Kim. We see that harvester count just fall. Yeah,
you can see David Kim's desperately trying to counterattack. The workers can fight back, but they're going to take a lot of damage in this coming exchange. He may even manage to wear down those zealots over time and take them out, but still, every worker dead is just vital economy lost, and you can see the damage has been done there. The workers do not manage to survive that attack, and the command center is forced to flee the battlefield. With one unit and a handful of zealots, Yun-Ho has destroyed an entire expansion and really put himself on top of the game. And David Kim's response is quick and brutal. Here come the Reapers jumping up to high ground before being chased off by the stalkers.
Yeah, Yun-Ho's doing a great job of overall map control. We saw him put the pressure onto that island expansion, as well as defend his base from what could have been a very devastating raid. And we see Reapers moving through the watchtower area and pushing over into Yun-Ho's 9 o'clock expansion. And here they go, looking like they could go for some cliff harass here. Oh, and we see, wow, stim on Reapers. That's going to deal absolutely massive damage. Just jumping up onto the cliff as soon as the stalkers warp into play, and they're able to take down a stalker in just a matter of seconds.
Yeah, and with no observers in the area, nothing you can use to see on the high ground. You can't blink to the high ground. You can't blink where you can't see. And so the Reapers are just dominating right now. They can get anything they can get at, they can destroy. They only manage to take out the one assimilator. And here comes an observer. This is exactly what the Protoss player needs to counter this new Terran threat. He's got to get the observer over here. This gives him vision up to the high ground. He can blink. David Kim doesn't like the look of it. He does manage to try to blink down, to jump down to do some damage, but it's not enough. And the Stalkers overwhelm the Reaper attack.
Yeah, David Kim thought that he could jump off of the cliff, harass a little bit, and then jump back up. But little did he know that Yun-Ho was already in position with an observer.
Yeah, and just the jump down and the jump up cost him some very, very important time. But it looks like David Kim has got a huge force now moving out of the map. David Kim has built a planetary fortress at his high yield here, which is a vital, vital benefit. Looks like the Zealots are going to stay and play there, guarding that location. David Kim over on the left-hand side of the map, pushing up against the Protoss. Major battle about to occur right here in the middle of the field.
Oh, we see the Stalkers trying to blink away. Yun-Ho is right now fighting a two-front battle. David Kim has a really good position at this point in the game, and he's going to be setting up camp out in the middle. The siege tanks were in siege mode. He's going to be falling back to the Xel'Naga watchtower, putting them in siege mode. Once again, he really wants Yun-Ho to try making a push on him.
Yeah, he really wants to maintain control of this position. He really hopes Yun-Ho will be foolish enough to come out here and engage with all those Marauders and Hellions. Look, he's got the Hellions up front, protect against the Zealots. Oh, there's a Sky Storm. Huge, huge hit. Lots of damage. The Marauders can kind of tank that, but that's way too many hits. They need more than that if they're going to take that kind of damage. You can't take multiple Sky Storm hits. And here come the Protoss pushing in, looking for a little payback. Another Sky Storm right in the middle of the Terran stack.
Not looking too good for David Kim. Some great placement on those Side Storms from Yun-Ho. He really used his tech advantage to overwhelm David Kim's army. He has the perfect counter to any sort of low-tier army. That Side Storm really, really turned the tide of battle, and he had enough High Templar that he was able to just storm after storm after storm.
And there's the Protoss charge. This is looking really, really great for the Protoss right now. They've got a huge advantage. They've got a massive amount of board control. They've got a much larger army, and they're moving onto the board. The Terrans, of course, got to have some kind of response here. And it looks like the Protoss are moving down to engage this planetary fortress. You can see they're trying to tear it out. The Terrans, meanwhile, are repairing it rapidly, even as they're side-storming the SCVs. Meanwhile, the Terran force moves up right behind this force. More side-storms as the Terran and Protoss battle it out over this planetary fortress.
Oh, but it's not looking good for Yunho. He's been sandwiched in between a planetary fortress and a large army, and he's almost about to take down the planetary fortress, but no. Oh, the planetary fortress with sub 100 HP just barely lives.
Unbelievable. Huge amounts of damage to David Kim's army. He loses a ton of SCVs there, but still, I think the advantage went to him. He wiped out that entire Protoss force. Well, a little sneaky shenanigans by the Protoss here. They've got some High Templar on the high ground using that Warp Prism. He may be able to do some damage up there. Meanwhile, it looks like a nuclear weapon from David Kim has been launched. He's got a medevac overhead trying to heal it. The Ghost is healed while the medevac picks him up and the nuke lands, hitting the Nexus, failing to destroy it, but still doing a lot of damage as David Kim's forces roll in to trash this Protoss base.
Oh, the Ghost just barely gets away. Good thing the medevac was there to heal him up for just enough right now. David Kim doesn't have sight, but he throws down a scan, able to take down those Stalkers, and now it's looking like, wow, that Nexus is free reign. You can see the Thors using their special ability to deal absolutely massive damage to Yunho's base.
And he's using some Sidestorm on the Thors. It's a little bit of a mistake. He really should be going for a phase shift at that point. It's a new ability. He's probably just not 100% aware of it yet, but it allows you to actually get the Thor out of the action for a short period of time. And the Colossus moving in now. Again, also not a great one against the Thors, but they do a significant amount of damage. It does give him some advantage here, and the Protoss just powering through these Thors with all the wrong weapons, but he's got such a powerful economy at this point, he can afford to do it. And another nuke dropping from David Kim, doing terrible, terrible damage to that Nexus as the Ghost is just continuing his constant harassment of the Protoss.
David Kim's doing exactly what he needs to be doing at this point in the game. He needs to put pressure everywhere simultaneously. We can see that Yunho did have map control. Another nuke comes down, able to take down Yunho's natural. He currently only has one base on the left side of the map to gather minerals from. His main has been mined out.
Unbelievable. The Ghost for the win as it closes in, dropping nuke after nuke on the Protoss base. And here come the Protoss, desperate for some blood here, closing in, using the Colossus, trying to get some additional damage. And it looks like the Thors and the Marauders are going to simply be too much for this force. They're going to just power right through this Protoss force and just tear it to pieces.
It's just far too many units for the Protoss force to deal with, and there's always the fact that those Marauders are very strong against any armored units, which both of those happen to be. And another nuke.
Unbelievable. As the Protoss desperately try to rebuild this base, you can see the warp-in going on there, trying to power down this Ghost. Can they get this Ghost before the nuke falls? No! The nuke lands. The Ghost hops back into the medevac and makes good his escape as that one Ghost continues his relentless one-man army attack on the Protoss.
David Kim and his addiction to terrible damage has really paid off this game.
And you can see the Protoss are in a lot of trouble right now. They've got a lot of workers idle. There's not a lot they can do. The Terrans are in control of the board right now. They're trashing any attempt by the Protoss to get another Nexus in the field.
And he's got a
nuke coming down right in
position.
Exactly the right place. He wants to get the battle to fight here. The Protoss player may not have noticed the little tiny red dot. No, he has seen it, and it looks like he's going to back away. A nuke wasted, but still, it's bought the Terran player a little bit of time to try to get in position. He uses Stim on his Marauders, and he's closing in for the kill. This is not the right unit mix for the Protoss right now. The Colossus can do okay against those Marauders, but still, the Marauders do a lot of damage against the Stalkers, and the Thor is very effective as well.
If there had just been a few Zealots in there to distract those Marauders and the Thor for just a few seconds longer, the tide of battle really could have changed. But right now, Yunho is having a lot of trouble keeping up anywhere on the map. He has been hit repeatedly, again and again, and right now he's even been forced to remote mine from his natural expansion.
He's really just trying to hold out at this point for as long as he can to see what he can do to keep back in this game. There are some tech choices that might get him back in the game. He might be able to get some Dark Templars out to really get him back in the game, but he's in a little bit of trouble right now. And there's the GG. He decided he's not going to get to that tech advantage. He knows David Kim has outplayed him, and it looks like another win, unbelievably, for David Kim.
A fantastic match between these two players. I love nukes.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great game. Thank you for joining us for this StarCraft 2 Battle Report.